Welcome back to CFO Weekly, where we're talking with financial leaders about how to build efficiency in their teams, create time for strategy, and ultimately get results. With your host, Megan Weiss. Let's jump right in.
Today, my guest is Chip Pate. Chip is the Chief Financial Officer for CFO, a leader in critical access management. Named one of Austin's 2021 top CFOs, Pate brings an engineering mindset to operational technology leadership and has played an integral role in SecureLink's business success since joining in 2017, steering finances while leading a massive customer onboarding process. Previously, Chip served as a financial executive at various tech companies, including WebSense and PDI Software. He brought his expertise in financial and operational excellence, financial modeling, investment review, internal controls, and buy and sell side diligence to SecureLink. During his tenure, he helped triple the company's revenue and guided SecureLink towards a now continuous rapid growth trajectory by overseeing the sale of the company to Cove Hill Partners.
Chip, thank you very much for being my guest this afternoon.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that's of great interest to me, the journey to become a data-driven organization. These days, we're collecting more data than ever, but the data itself is worthless without undertaking the necessary transformation to extract insights from that data. And many organizations fall short of achieving that full transformation for one reason or another. So let's get started in discussing how we can be better prepared for and smarter about this journey.
Sounds good.
First, tell me about your career progression and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So after graduating from the University of Virginia, my first job out of college was to be an engineer. But I quickly changed focus and worked in a variety of financial and accounting roles. I started off as a financial analyst at Applied Materials, after which I moved to Compass Learning, where I became their FP&A manager, got promoted to director, and then eventually became their controller. Following my time at Compass Learning, I became the senior director of FP&A at WebSense, helping the company move their headquarters from San Diego to Austin. And then I moved on to PDI Software, where I served as their CFO. In 2017, I brought my expertise in financial and operational excellence, financial modeling, investment review, internal controls, and buy and sell side diligence to SecureLink as their CFO. And I've since taken on responsibilities as the COO as well. I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish at SecureLink over the last few years, even after experiencing all the challenges of the recent pandemic. Since I've joined SecureLink, we've managed to quadruple the company's revenue, mostly organically. And additionally, in October 2020, we made some changes that allowed SecureLink to continue its growth trajectory, resulting in the sale of the business to Cove Hill Partners. I've also recently guided SecureLink through its first acquisition of data governance company Maze Analytics out of Nashville, Tennessee, earlier this year, which was also exciting.
That's a super interesting career path. So you studied systems engineering, but here you are today, you're a CFO. So first of all, tell us how you made that transition.
Yeah, to be honest, the transition was actually surprisingly easier than I expected. Throughout my life, I've always had a passion for numbers, which is obviously a key attribute for anyone who's either in an engineering role or a finance and accounting role. And, so to make that transition, it was one that was a little bit scary at first, but at the end of the day, just being able to use my engineering background and apply it to finance roles, I think the transition was actually pretty easy.
So did someone come to you and ask you to take on a role, or did you actively seek out a role in accounting and finance?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit of both. At Applied Materials, their finance and accounting organization actually needed someone with database experience. And they were looking for somebody, and it was an opportunity for me to kind of jump over. And like I said, I was approached, and at first it was something that I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but after thinking about it, I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of join a team that I didn't have much experience in. And so, again, it's obviously worked out for the best.
Yeah. So what advantages do you think that background gives you?
Yeah. Honestly, I think my engineering background and systems approach give me an advantage in financial roles because I look at things more holistically. So, if I have an investment opportunity that I'm in the process of reviewing, I use a systems engineering lens to look at the investment. And I'm able to notice ripple effects that investment's going to have across the organization, which allows us to better prepare for any secondary impacts, ones that you wouldn't see on face value. A perfect example is like if you learn that a product release is going to be delayed due to challenges within the development organization, it's going to have an impact on your entire company's forecast, not just the dev industry, organization. So obviously within dev, you're going to have timing of spending, resource constraints, things of that are all going to have to change based off that new knowledge. But that impact goes way, way larger across the entire organization. If you think about it, you now are going to have to look at, when is your marketing spend going to be tied to that product release? And when are your sales and bookings forecasts going to be based off a new date of when that product's actually going to be able to go to market? So, thinking at it with a systems approach allows you to look at how that change is going to impact the entire organization. So that way you can make sure your forecast is completely adjusted for any sort of changes.
Yeah, I'm sure that holistic viewpoint is more important these days than ever. I mean, the days of operating within a silo for finance and accounting are long over. So
very true, very true.
Tell us about CFO Weekly, maybe a bit about their history, their mission, and what it is they do.
Yeah, so I'll start by telling you a little bit about CFO Weekly. We're actually the industry leader in critical access management, empowering organizations to secure their most high-risk assets, including network systems and data. Organizations across multiple industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, government, legal, gaming, all trust CFO to protect themselves. A little bit more about our history is that we were founded in 2003 as a software platform to provide secure, accountable, and auditable third-party remote access. Since then, we've helped more than 31,000 organizations ensure their data is secure during tens of millions of support sessions. Our mission is that we provide comprehensive security solutions to govern, control, monitor, and audit the most critical and highest risk assets within an organization. So let me break that down a little bit by telling you a little bit more about what exactly we do. So as I said, every organization has critical assets that they need to protect, whether it's their network systems and infrastructure, applications, or data. CFO helps that organizations protect the critical assets from malicious actors by securing all forms of critical access, from remote access for third parties to access to critical infrastructure, regulated information, IT, or even OT. A couple examples are, we have a major healthcare provider who uses CFO to manage access to its medical equipment so that only certified and authenticated users are able to access critical systems such as MRI machines or health monitoring systems. We have a major real estate management company that uses CFO to manage its access to dozens of major buildings and infrastructure, allowing it safe and secure access to building automation and security control systems. Another great example is a major healthcare provider uses CFO to monitor access to private patient data to ensure that only the appropriate caregiving team who needs that access is able to obtain that access for that particular patient.
So is it securing both physical and digital assets or just digital?
Mostly digital, yes.
Okay. And what are your personal proudest achievements since joining CFO?
Yeah, to be honest, the easy answer to that would be to point to the sale of the company last year to Covell Partners as the biggest accomplishment. But really what I'm most proud of and what I've most enjoyed is the journey leading up to that point and really, highlighting the business that we built over that time. Prior to joining the business, CFO was truly focused on customer satisfaction and product quality, and not really on go-to-market. And so while we were under the Vista Equity ownership, the company really switched to a high growth mentality. We knew that our product was needed across all those verticals that I mentioned, and we just really weren't actively going out and trying to sell the product. So as the part of that switch, I built the business plan and helped drive the mindset change towards sales and marketing, while at the same time ensuring customers and products were not neglected. Our net retention is north of 100%. So it shows that our customers love our product and see value out of it because they continue to renew and they continue to use more of our product.
Yeah, 100% retention. That's amazing.
Yeah. The emphasis on our growth results in an average annual growth rate for us over the last few years of 36%. And it also allowed us to build a scalable sales and marketing organization that's going to allow us to continue to grow into the future. The other thing that I'm really proud of is the culture of CFO Weekly. CFO Weekly has won multiple best practice awards due to that amazing culture and its employee base. I'd love to say it was all me, but we had a really strong culture prior to joining the business. but I know that I've really helped that culture flourish in my tenure. And I'm really proud of the team that we've assembled. Our culture was obviously challenged during the pandemic, but we've persevered and we continue to provide a great place for people to work that has amazing career opportunities. One example is myself personally. As I mentioned earlier, I've grown from being just the CFO to taking on legal responsibilities and renewal of our customer base and transitioning into that COO and CFO role. And so, what I like to say is we like to challenge our employees to learn and grow daily in their roles so that they can be better employees, throughout their career as they continue on.
It sounds like you have a lot to be proud of. So congratulations on those accomplishments.
Thank you.
Okay, and switching gears a little bit. So let's talk about the role of CFO and how you've seen this role evolve over the last decade or two.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest change I've seen is related to the CFO role is around strategy and operations. You touched on it at the beginning of the call, but really, historically, if you thought about the CFO, knowing the numbers and being able to forecast business projections were really the most important component of the role and really what you were mostly, judged off of. Whereas now I would say taking those financials and applying them to the business to drive operational decisions and help frame that strategy is probably the most important part of the role. The CFO needs to be involved in helping the business set the strategy while at the same time ensuring the strategy doesn't negatively impact the operations of the business.
And what does it mean to you to be a data-driven organization?
Yeah, great question. When people talk about data, being a data-driven organization, they sometimes stop at the word data and forget that the key word in the classification to me is really driven. I think most businesses these days have come a long way on the data side. They do a great job of providing data and trends that are important to the business, whether it's metrics on bookings or sales growth or operational metrics around support and customer success, like customer satisfaction or NPS. Companies are now trying to understand their operations on a metrics or data level. And I think a lot of businesses made that change. However, where the real value comes for me is when the business actually is driven using that data. So a company truly becomes data driven to me when they follow a couple steps. One, they can identify a problem. Two, compile data to understand that problem. Three, create a hypothesis on how to solve the problem. Four, implement those changes. And then lastly, use data to iterate and optimize the results after that change. So constantly course correct based off what the data is telling you to get to that optimal solution. So using the data to drive business decisions to me is that key value creation step in the process and is often overlooked. Creating analyses that are not used to drive decisions can actually be a value detractor for the business due to wasted time and effort. So one of the things that I love to tell my team is we regularly review the metrics that we're compiling and reporting on to make sure that the business either getting value or that we're driving decisions. Sometimes metrics are great as just checkpoints to make sure things aren't going off the rails, and some are used to actually drive and make decisions. So as long as you can check one of those boxes, I'd say that the data that's being published is worthwhile. But if you're just reporting on data for the sake of reporting on data, again, you could take those resources and do much more value with them.
And just out of curiosity, so to become a data-driven organization, are there new roles you're seeing that are being created, or I guess new titles within the organization?
I would say that there's I think for us, a big emphasis has been around, you'll see operational teams reporting into functional organizations. And when I say that, you'll have a revenue operations team that's going to focus solely on, the sales data and the trends and rep performance and pipeline conversion and things of that nature. I've seen marketing operation teams that are focused on helping that marketing team, perform at its best. But really the team I think that has had the biggest impact is really the FP&A organization. So, within financial planning and analysis. And for me, it's not really a role shift. It's more just that mindset change. And, with computing power and the access to data that we're seeing in the world today, really using that data and actually using it to drive value, I think is where people need to get to. And because data is so much more prolific, it just makes it that much easier to go be able to use it and help the business kind of grow.
And what do you think is wrong with the old-fashioned way of doing things, which is where people just rely on their gut or maybe, the previous experience that they've had with a problem?
Yeah, like while gut and previous experience are obviously helpful in decision making, I think you need to be able to have that data to support those decisions. If you think about any sort of business situation, if you're saying, oh, this is exactly what I did in a past experience, like they're never going to be exactly the same. There could be plenty of overlap between the two situations, but they're not going to perfectly align. So therefore, by using data, you can take into consideration all the minor differences between your past experience and what you're facing now. And you can run variable testing to get to a better solution. You're not going to just say, this is what was successful in the past, let's apply it now. Yeah, let's apply that now, but let's use data to kind of cater and figure out, how we can tweak that assumption to make it even better for the business long term.
And what do you see as the benefits of becoming data-driven?
Yeah, I would say number one for me is really consistency and predictability. By tracking and reporting on leading indicators, the business now has a forward view on expectations of business performance. This allows the business to both improve on trends that are unfavorable, as well as prepare now for what's going to happen in the future. An example of this is, if your pipeline metrics are predicting an overperformance in sales, say 6 months out from now, it allows you to update your hiring plan to ensure you have the services and implementation resources to support the expected increase in new customers. If you weren't looking forward and trying to figure out what those projections were going to be, you could get in a situation where you sign all these new customers and all of a sudden you aren't able to provide them the level of support that you're used to. And so by doing that, you've got that predictability as you look forward and what you expect from a business perspective. Number two for me, I would say is accountability. If the company's identified the key metrics that's going to drive the company's success, they can identify the owners for those metrics and hold the leaders accountable to drive those results. It's one of those things where if you're watching something, it's going to perform better. And so by identifying those key metrics and giving owners to each of them, those owners are going to watch them and make sure that the business is performing in those areas, which is, again, going to lead to better consistency and predictability. And then number three, I touched on this before, but like if the business is able to tie business decisions to analytical insights, it helps you tell the story behind your hypothesis for change. So in my career, businesses that have been data-driven exhibit a few key characteristics. They're continuously improving the business through metrics. Their employees at all levels understand and can report on the data and have increased, and the business has increased organizational agility to diagnose and solve problems. And lastly, they're better at change management as they can tell the story of change throughout their numbers.
So are you providing specific training to your employees to be able to use data?
Yeah, for me, it's more asking the so what or what does this mean for us? So if we put together a data analysis, we're going to want to look at it and say, what are the conclusions that we can make from it? And now let's take it one step further. So, if a trend is going in one direction, it's like, what does that mean for us? And how is that going to impact the rest of the business? And by taking a step back away from the numbers and looking at it through that lens, you can now say, okay, this is the trend that's going to happen and it's going to have X, Y, and Z impacts on the rest of the business. Now let's go look at what those trends are going to do. And are we going to see a change from something that we just identified? So again, it's really just more trying to ask that informational question of like, okay, what does this mean? And how can we use this to better make a decision about what we're trying to do?
And it seems so many organizations fall short of becoming data-driven. So what do you see as the most common roadblocks?
Yeah, I would say probably for me, the three biggest challenges are choosing the best data to analyze. Number two, which is crucial, is ensuring data integrity. And then three, applying that data. There's other challenges that exist, like picking the correct tools and systems. In the beginning, it's going to be hard to build muscle, but you want to build that muscle to analyze data effectively. So that's going to take some time. And then compilation of data. Right now, we've got data coming from so many different sources. Being able to pull it all together so that way you can analyze it can also be a challenge. But I would say that those last ones aren't nearly as hard as those first three. At first, with the lack of experience and knowledge of all the possible data streams, choosing the best data to analyze can be a difficult task. However, this step is absolutely crucial to ensure that you're moving down the correct path and looking at the information that will help you solve the problem. Like if you're picking the wrong data set, even if you get to an answer, it may not solve the problem that you're trying to look at that point in time. So again, picking that data set and finding the right numbers and information for you to help go drive that decision is going to be crucial. Ensuring data integrity, which I said is extremely important, it is very challenging, and it's all about continuity over time so that we can help identify trends. The way you can overcome this challenge is by defining processes and policies around your data and how it's going to be calculated and how it's going to be reported and making sure that those are followed. A perfect example of this is by setting the criterion for when a sales opportunity converts into the pipeline, and following that same process. So whether it's a gating factor around, is it a demo meeting or is it interest from a prospect, or what is that level of threshold? And by having that be standardized throughout the history of the business, you're going to get data that's going to come out that is going to be the exact same over time, which is going to allow you to understand what the trends are doing. If you're constantly changing that threshold of what actually, or when does that opportunity convert, the trends and the information that you're going to be looking at isn't going to be nearly as valuable, because you're not, the changing the metric could be what's driving the trend instead of seeing the trend actually change in the business, if that makes sense. And then lastly, applying the data is also a common roadblock, as you can have detractors who don't believe what the data is telling you. I think this challenge can be overcome by showing trended data and proving the consistency behind the numbers. Once you get into the details and show someone, hey, this is really what it's showing us, and we're going to continue down this path, it's really hard for detractors to argue when the data has been successful in the past and can show what to expect for the business.
And to your first point about picking the right data, what tips do you have for doing that, making sure you're not boiling the ocean?
Yeah, so I think if you're looking at a problem, you want to say, what's the root of the problem? What's causing this? And so that's the first place to start. So if, I'm trying to think of a great example, but if you have that problem and you say, this is the key thing that's actually driving it, that's the data set where you want to start. You're then going to want to expand and look at other ancillary data sets to see if they're having an impact on the results in that root part. But really focusing on that root in the beginning is where you're going to get the most value.
And regarding change management, I know that's often one of the hardest steps for companies on their journey in becoming data-driven is just changing the mindset and the processes that have been in place forever. So how do you overcome organizational resistance and get people to start doing things in a new way?
Yeah, so I'd say this is a really challenging question because the answer is going to depend on the dynamics in the company. But one tactic that I've seen be successful across, the multiple companies that I've worked at, is really to focus on company performance. Excuse me. So the reason for needing more data is really trying to make the company better. If we can focus on how every department in the company is taking similar steps to look at data and find ways to improve their team, it's hard for someone to be like, I don't need to do that when the rest of the business is. Also, getting more data is not about finding faults in the current situation or structure of what's being done. It's about the improvements that we're going to make the company overall better. The question I love to ask people is, who doesn't want to be the best at their job or their function, right? Like, if someone doesn't want to raise their hand there, then they're probably not the right person for the job. And I think using data can make that possible. And so again, it's really focusing on how this is going to make us better, not focusing on why we did things the way we did in the past. It's really about the improvement and where we're trying to get to, continuous improvement.
And are there any tools or technologies that you're using right now that are helping make your life easier?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about the couple core products, I would say that there's multiple products out there that fit that subset. So I'm gonna avoid naming specific names and really just kind of focus on the key products that I've seen be helpful. Okay. So, starting with CRM or, resource management, and having that system linked to your ERP or GL function is crucially important because it allows you to automate, almost all of the finance and accounting organization. So whether it's, something all the way from the beginning of when you're actually quoting a customer, having that data be able to flow through all the way to your GL to when you're actually invoicing. So basically from quote to cash. Having that, like I said, integrated and automated. So all that information flows to your systems. It prevents errors. It makes the process more streamlined, which means you're going to get your cash quicker, which is obviously a key component of the business. And then if you think about the data-driven side on the on the back end of that, the two tools that I've seen be the best are really BI tools and then CPM tools. And so BI obviously being business intelligence, with the ones we focus on there are around sales and marketing. And so we spend a lot of time really digging into our pipeline, digging into our rep performance, and digging into trends that we're seeing in the business from those perspectives. Being able to take your sales data and break it down into what verticals are buying the product, what's the ASP of the product, what's the sales cycle of the product. All that stuff can be generated at the push of a button coming out of a solid BI tool. And then lastly, CPM, company performance management. Being able to take the financial data that's in your ERP and report on it in multiple different ways and compare to your budget and compare to your forecast. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, like businesses and the environment is so rapidly changing now. Your budget that you set at the beginning of the year could be antiquated 3 months later, and you need to be driving based off your forecast. And that forecast is going to change every single month. So having a great CPM in place allows you to be able to benchmark off of, the right data set about what's most important and what's most relevant to the business at that point in time.
I really like your point about, having your CRM linked to your ERP and automating the whole process of quote to cash. I feel like a lot of companies probably struggle becoming data-driven because their data is so disjointed.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's one of the things that allows your business to be scalable. If you're trying to go from 500 customers to 1,000 customers, the way to solve that is not, just adding more people to go through manual processes. You need to automate those processes. So like you said, you can have the data coming out of the system to be able to analyze it, but also you can then scale at a more cost-effective way because you've got the tools and systems in place to be able to support your customers on a daily basis.
And lastly, as a CFO, what is keeping you up at night these days?
Yeah, great question. I'd say there's really two things that keep me up at night right now. Number one is growth. Our business, as I said, we've quadrupled our size in the last 4 years, and we want to continue that trend. So we want to continue to grow. And I always think back to the old saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. So that's always in the back of my mind. I'm constantly thinking about how can we accelerate our growth and what data can we look at to improve our sales and marketing organizations. And like I said, help the business grow. I want to be an enabler for sales and marketing to allow the business to continue its trajectory. Number two for me is really kind of in the current and rapidly changing job market that you're seeing is really around employee retention. With the ever-changing world we're seeing right now, you have employees out there who are able to work fully remote, which means the competition to find and retain top talent has drastically changed within the last year or so. So I worry about how can we protect, one of our most valuable resources, which is our employees. And then additionally, how do we attract more top talent as we grow? That job market is just so fierce right now that it's just something that's always in the back of my mind, thinking about how are we going to get the next best person to help us take our business to the next level.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. But these days, employees can be poached from, companies anywhere in the United States, not to mention all over the world.
Exactly. It's challenging for sure. I think every business right now is facing it. So yeah. We're all in the same boat.
Chip, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking with you and hearing about your experience and the resulting insights. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today, and I wish you and SecureLink all the best.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Yep. To all of our listeners, please tune in next week. And until then, take care.
If you're ready to boost efficiency and streamline your accounting processes at significant cost savings, it's time to talk with Personiv. Their people-powered solutions have transformed the delivery of back-office tasks and general accounting functions for decades, partnering with clients to provide everything from accounts payable to payroll services. See what Personiv can do for you by visiting personiv.com.
You've been listening to CFO Weekly, presented by Personiv. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to hear all of our episodes. Want to learn more? Check out personiv.com. Thanks for listening.